You had made a couple of videos recently, and I've been watching all your videos, but the two that you made recently that really caught my attention were ones of your experiences in the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
And you said that you've been a converted Catholic since 13,
yeah, 2013.
and listening to you, which obviously I don't know how many of my viewers watch you or saw those videos, but you had a lot of stories to tell that were one, very disturbing, but two, and I could really, listening to you tell them, I could tell that you were really kind of hurt in a way.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, very bothered by the
So
whole
yeah,
thing.
so if you could share with my viewers some of those stories, um, we'd like to hear them, and I can relate to you on some of them
Yeah.
as well.
Well, I'll tell you, I converted to Catholicism in 2013, and I was extremely zealous, and I was extremely idealistic, and I had a tremendous amount of willpower to fight for and to defend the Catholic Church. My I dedicated my life to it, truly dedicated my life to it. And I educated myself as much as I possibly could about the history of Catholicism, the theology of Catholicism, and the apologetics for Catholicism. I engaged in debates with people, numerous debates with Protestants about Catholicism. So I dedicated my life to the Catholic Church. And I truly believed that the Catholic Church wants educated people. The Catholic Church wants educated Catholics to fight the good fight. Well, that's a lie. It's a lie. Because if that were the case, they would welcome people like me. But they don't. Because when I first joined the Catholic Church, I was very idealistic, but then when I would speak with other Catholics, or when I would speak with priests, they had absolutely no interest in anything I had to say. Most of them had no interest. Actually, none of the priests had any interest in what I had to say. Very few Catholics had any interest in what I had to say. And then there was the very strange behavior that I noticed from priests, like very, very abnormal behavior. For one, there was I don't want to give any names, but there was a priest who was very educated. He knew a lot about the Catholic faith, and every year he would make trips to Rome, and he would help lead tours or whatever. So he said, "Hey, you should come to Rome. You would love it." I said, "Well, sounds like a great idea." So he gave me the agenda, when we would be flying and all that, and I said, "Great, let's do this." My father was completely against the idea, but I really wanted to go. I was 23 at the time, 22, 23, and we invited this priest over for dinner, and during the dinner, he said, I know a lot of people in Italy. I can introduce you to a lot of Catholics in Italy, a lot of young people, things like that. So that, to me, was what motivated me to go to Rome, because in America, it's hard to find young people interested in Catholicism, because you go into church and it's mainly older people.
Yeah.
So he said, I know this Italian girl, and she's single, and I would love to introduce you to her. And also I would love to introduce you to her family. So in my mind, I thought, well, I'm 23 years old, I'm single, why not? So I said, yeah, I would love that. So we had dinner, we talked for an hour or so, and then he leaves. And then later on, I get an email from him saying, "Hey, I want to show a picture of you to this family in Italy, and could you give me your age so I can tell them how old you are for this girl?" And I said, "Okay, sounds reasonable." So I gave him a photo of mine, and then I gave him my age, and I never heard anything back from him. So about a month or so later, I'm in this church, and I'm with my friend. And this friend of mine is friends with this priest. In fact, it was this friend of mine who introduced me to this priest. And we're talking, and my friend tells the priest, "Hey, do you want to have dinner at my house?" He said, "Sure." So we go So I'm in my car, and I'm with my parents, and we're driving to my friend's house, and I get a text from my friend, and he says, "Who's Nick?" And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, it looks like this priest accidentally texted me saying, hey, dinner at my place, but I never invited his friend Nick over. What's going on? I said, I have no idea. So I go to my friend's house, and it's just him and his wife there, and we get a knock on the door, and it's the priest with this very, very tall white male. Very tall. Big hands, big shoulders, Italian background, looked like he was a mobster. And he tells me that, he begins to tell me about his background, and he says, well, I just got divorced, and I moved here to live with the father, with the priest. And the priest has this stupid smile on his face, and he says, oh, Nick cooks for me. He's a great chef. That's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
So, I told the priest, I said, whatever happened to that girl, that Italian girl? And he said, oh, Theodore, the Italians will be fine, leave them alone. And I said, I don't understand. I gave you my photo, I gave you my age. What, did you talk to them? What's the scoop with that? And he said, the Italians will be fine, Theodore, leave them alone. And now, if you ever see this guy, he's like a mix between a priest and Hannibal Lecter. Okay, he's short, white guy, has that priest look, but personality-wise, he's kind of like Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah,
very
I can picture what you're saying.
Charming, very polite, but if you push the right button, he might just bite you in the throat. Okay?
Yeah.
So I left it at that. Then about a month, maybe like 2 weeks, or maybe about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, I speak to him on the phone, and I say, when's a good time to buy the ticket to go to Rome or whatever? Because at this point, I'm very naive, and I'm quite frankly, I was acting very stupid because I didn't really put one on one together. And he says, well, we would be flying at this time or whatever. He gives me this normal information. And then we start talking about the gay agenda. And I say, I'm fighting the gay agenda right now. There's a lot of controversy, whatever. And we start talking about homosexuality. And he says, well, homosexuality is not really a sin as long as it's monogamous. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. He said, I used to work at the Mother Teresa AIDS Center, and I worked with a lot of gay people, and I would tell them to stay monogamous and to love one another and all this crap. And he said, if two men masturbate each other, this is what he told. I'm not trying to say this for shock value. This is what he told.
I've heard this already, but it disgusts me that.
Yeah, he said
people think like this.
He said two men can masturbate each other, and it's not a sin. So I said, well, that's just wrong, And I kind of started arguing with him, and then and he said, oh, Theodore, that's your opinion. Well, I got to get going. Goodbye.
Didn't he say that St. Thomas Aquinas said that?
Yeah, he said that St. Thomas Aquinas actually said this, and
dear Lord.
That's just a lie. And about 5 minutes later, I get an email from him saying, essentially saying, keep your opinion to yourself. Don't give me your opinion. I don't want to hear it. He was very, very rude and very aggressive in the tone of the email. And I wrote him back, and I said, you are an evil heretic. And we had an exchange back and forth. We got into this sort of theological debate. And I gave him and he says, we follow the New Testament. We don't follow the Old Testament. The New Testament doesn't talk about homosexuality. And I said, I beg to differ. And I gave him the verses from St. Paul in Romans chapter 1. So I get an email. So I began to do research on him, and I found out that this priest covered up for a pedophile. And I sent him what I found out about him. I said, I know this about you. I found out what you did. And he wrote back to me the next morning, and he said, my friend Nick doesn't like what you're saying, and it's a shame that you've gone down this route. And it was really an implicit threat, because Nick was a very intimidating looking guy. And what does Nick have to do with this discussion? Why else would you bring up Nick unless you were trying to intimidate me?
Listening to you tell that story when I first heard the video, it makes me wonder if Nick is one of two things: that priest's actual lover, who he left his family for, or he's a part of the mob.
I think that he, and I can't fully prove this, but just based on my intuition, I think he got a divorce because this guy told me, now we're getting into some other details, but it's fine. This guy told me that his wife was from Ecuador. Now, my mother is from Mexico, and I'm familiar with the Latin American culture, okay, because Mexico, Ecuador, Panama, they have their differences, but they're all very similar. They're all part of that Latin strata of the world. And one thing I can tell you is that women from those sorts of cultures rarely ever get a divorce. It's rare. And he said that his wife left him. Well, I think I know why. Either you left her for a guy, or she left you because you're a flaming sodomite.
It has to be one of those two things, I'm telling you.
That's the conclusion I came to. And I realized, you know, and he told me when I met this guy, this Nick guy, he told me that he was a trained martial artist and that he was running a martial arts school. And it was very obvious by looking at him that he would be able to handle himself in a fight. So he was obviously someone who was capable of inflicting damage on somebody easily. And another thing also is that, what was I going to say? Another thing is that, you know, this priest, he was very well connected in the Vatican. And he told me he was well connected. He told me that he had friends who were cardinals and many friends who were priests, and he had all these connections with people in Rome. And every time he would go to Italy every year, he would meet with a cardinal, or have dinner with a cardinal or multiple cardinals or whatever. And when I reported this guy to the diocese, they even told me, they took a while to get back to me, but I gave them all the evidence that I could gather, and they told me that there is no way we can get rid of this guy because he was appointed by the Pope. So the only way that this guy could be truly gotten rid of is if the Pope approves of him being removed, or defrocked, as they say.
Yeah.
So he was actually well connected enough that he was almost untouchable.
Yeah, so his job's safe. You can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, so he was truly part of a mob, like a mafia in a way. There is a homosexual mafia within the Vatican. People like to laugh at this idea, but even Cardinal Ratzinger himself suggested that there was, well, he didn't suggest, he pointed out that there was the existence, or there is the presence of a sodomite mafia within the Vatican. It's very obvious. And the guy wrote to me like a mobster. He said, you know, my friend Nick, very upset with you. It's sad that you've taken this route. Like, hint, hint.
Well, like he's gonna put a hit on you or something.
Yeah. It was very bizarre. You know, the whole experience was very surreal. But at that point, I realized that there was nothing that I could do. Or at that point, I realized not that there was nothing I could do, but that going to the authorities was meaningless. So the next year, in 2014, I got preyed on by another priest, Michael Yarbrough. And people can say, I can't believe that this happened within such a short amount of time.
And unfortunately, that video's been taken down everywhere because I can't find it anymore.
The bottom line is that truth is stranger than fiction. That's the bottom line. Truth is stranger than fiction. Because I'm not lying about what I'm saying. I'm not lying. And people think that I'm a liar. I'm not. This happened within 2 years. That I had 2 priests preying on me, being predators. And this priest, Yarbrough, he asked if I wanted to meet up with him. And at that point, my red flag, my spidey senses went up because I already had experience before.
And you got all of this. You did get all of this on video.
Yeah, I got the meeting and the fact that we met up in the cafe. Yeah, it was on film, yes. And people got upset with me, when I confronted this priest. I confronted him in the cafe. And people got upset with me because they said I should have gone to the bishop. Well, I tried that before. Nothing happened. So I realized that the only way that we can purge this problem is if we confront the people. If we confront the predators, not the people. If we confront the predators who are doing this, then we will fix the problem. So the backlash that I had Catholics telling me, and I'm not joking, that I should commit suicide. I had people telling me that I should jump off the window, that Yarbrough has done more for society than I ever will in my life. I had one guy told me that if I was there, I would have beaten you up and thrown you out of the church. And this is all coming from Catholics.
I remember seeing those comments.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I realized that the cancer wasn't really the priests. The cancer was the society itself. And the cancer still remains the society itself. The reason why we have so many predator priests is because society has a lot of predators. Because it's not just in the church that you have this problem. It's in the schools, the public education, the private education. It's in the universities. I mean, look at what happened. I'm not a big football enthusiast, but you're someone obviously who, looking at behind you, you're obviously someone who plays football. Wasn't there a situation in university football where some guy was molesting boys?
Jerry Sandusky, yes.
Yeah, and weren't people upset when he got in trouble?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Okay, so it's the same situation, but in a different institution. It's in the institution of football. Or it's within the paradigm or whatever you want to call it, the framework of sports.
I see what you're saying, because people seem to care when it happens at a popular major university football program, but in the Catholic Church, nobody cares. It seems.
Well, no. My point is that if a priest gets in trouble, or if he gets arrested for molesting boys, or if he gets in trouble for preying on young men. If he gets in trouble for being a predator, the congregants will defend the priest. If Sandusky gets in trouble for molesting boys, people get upset not because he molested boys, people get upset because he's now gone.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the reaction of the society is the same. Be it in the religious institution or be it in sports. It's the same reaction.
Yeah. That's true.
So the bottom line is that for enough people in society, pedophilia doesn't really bother them. That's what I've come to the conclusion. I've concluded that to a lot of people, pedophilia isn't a big deal. See, and that's another thing that I noticed when I saw what happened with Dennis Prager. Now, this one is public information because it was on a video, and I did a video and an article about it. Dennis Prager goes to Mr. David Rubin, he goes on the David Rubin show. Dennis Prager is a famous radio host, very famous in right-wing circles. He's a rabbi. He's a very educated person. But he goes on this YouTube right-wing show hosted by David Rubin, and he tells David Rubin, the Bible says that you can have just as much enjoyment with a young girl as you would a young boy, but the Bible also says that you should be married. I said, but why are you even bringing this up? It was very, very strange. And so I pointed this out, and people got mad at me. The same thing happened with with Milo. Milo comes along. He defends pederasty. And for some reason, this happened in the year 2017. It was like Milo and Prager. They were doing this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Milo says, well, sexual experience with young boys can be very beneficial to the young boy, and yada yada. He starts making it an apologetic for pedophilia and pederasty. And Milo puts out a book, and it becomes a New York Times bestseller. Well, apparently pedophilia, pederasty doesn't really bother a whole lot of people in this country.
Apparently not.
So it's like the church, it has all these predators, but why does it have predators? Because the society has a lot of predators.
And it's funny. Yeah. It's like, why do you suppose that is? First off, in Yarborough's case, not only was he a predator, but specifically he preyed on a young man who was suffering from a handicap, and he openly gave money to a homosexual group. I think it was, the Call to Action or something like that?
Was Action Now or something like that. Yeah, he gave several hundred. He was considered to be a major donor to this Catholic organization that is pro-homosexual and abortion. And yes, he sexually assaulted a young man who was not emotionally, but he was mentally very slow. So he was a susceptible person, kind of like a Forrest Gump type person.
But the thing is, why do you suppose that is that you get these people when you present them these facts that, hey, this guy did this, he is a predator, he's giving to these homosexual groups that the Catholic Church is supposed to be against. Why do you think that is that nobody cares? That they're so defensive of this guy and others like them in that situation?
One thing that I have noticed over the years is that people are slaves to narratives. That's just a fact, and everyone is susceptible to falling into this paradigm of being a slave to a narrative. If I say to you, only liberals support homosexuals, and then you believe that, but then all of a sudden you see a bunch of right-wingers who say that they love Sodom. And then you start supporting those right-wingers. And you say, well, wait a second. I thought you were anti-Sodom. Why are you supporting these right-wingers who love Sodom? Then you'll say, well, the left actually supports Sodom, but these right-wing Sodomites are okay for some reason. It's literally the same thing. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, like an exaggerated example, but actually it's a very real example, because we really started seeing a lot of that in 2016 until now. Now, because of COVID, everything has been put on pause.
Yeah.
I imagine when this COVID thing is over, we're going to see like a lot of weird stuff coming out politically, because it's just building up and it's about to explode. But you have these conservatives who for years have gone against the homosexual agenda. But then all of a sudden you start seeing them supporting Milo Yiannopoulos. You start seeing them supporting David Rubin. You start seeing them supporting that freak who runs the Gateway Pundit. I don't remember his name. And you'll say, well, wait a second, I thought you were against Sodom. They'll say, well, I am against Sodom, but the left are the ones who are truly pushing Sodom. These right-wing Sodomites, they're okay. They're our gay allies. So how do you explain this contradiction? The only way that you can explain it is that people are literally slaves to a narrative, because they have why do people become slaves to a narrative? What is the appeal to becoming a slave to a narrative? The appeal is that a particular fantasy appears to be real. So the fantasy is that we have our strong conservative brothers and sisters, our right-wingers. These right-wingers are for moral values, and they want the traditional family, and they are going to manifest this ideal society that I want. So that type of thought can be so appealing that it can become almost like a drug, that or like alcohol, that it just intoxicates you. It inebriates you. Idealism is a very strong drug. In fact, I would say that idealism is the most dangerous drug ever, because of the fact that when people really believe that their ideal society can come into existence, they'll believe and do anything. They'll believe and do all sorts of crazy things.